Welcome to Definitely Not Therapy, the show where I speak to real people and they tell real stories and they share a real vulnerability. It's raw, it's honest, and I'll try and make you think along the way. I'll try and make you laugh along the way. I might make you cry along the way. There's probably times I'll make you swear along the way as well. We're going to talk about all life's highs. We're going to talk about all life's lows. We're going to talk about all the bits in between, the things that we probably shouldn't talk about. The things we shouldn't say out loud, but we're going to say them anyway. We're going to talk about them anyway, because that's the way that you get change. I'm Dan Lawrence, and let's get into it. This is Definitely Not Therapy. Definitely Not Therapy. So in this episode of Definitely Not Therapy, I'll be speaking to Dan. Dan struggled with his mental health from the age of 16. 16 years old. At 16, you're still a child. And he's navigating a mental health journey. He's only 22 now. But in his own words, what a hell of a journey. What a hell of a journey. I, for one, I'm grateful that Dan has decided to come and share his story on the podcast. I want to find out how bad it got. I want to find out how low he got, and I want to find out why. But I also want to find out how he's doing now and how he got to where he is and what that journey's been like. The highs and the lows. Unfiltered. It's really important for men to talk. It's really important for anyone to talk about mental health, especially about men's mental health, because there's a stigma attached to it. There's a stigma attached to men's mental health where men can't talk. Men shouldn't talk. We're going to buck that trend. Men should talk. Men should absolutely be talking about their mental health and their emotions, and they should be sharing, and we should be leaning on each other, and we should be helping each other. We should be there to support each other. Dan is only 22, and he's had his fair share of struggles already at the age of 22. And I believe that we need to help this generation of young men. We need to buck that trend now for change. Because the last 100 years, or however long, back to caveman times, well, man up. Just man up, just get on with it. And there is a version of man up that is okay. There is a version of that is okay. The version of man up that is okay is when it's your friends who are giving you the right advice. And they're telling it to you in a way that is safe to do so, but is helpful. In my opinion, it takes more of a man to stand up and to say, do you know what? I'm struggling. I need help. It takes a braver man to tell his friend, I'm struggling, than it does to be able to go to the gym and be the one that lifts the heaviest weight. There's a place for that. There's a place for exercise when it comes to mental health. I'm on that journey myself. But just because you've got a six-pack doesn't mean that you're the strongest man in the room. It doesn't mean you're the bravest man in the room. The bravest man in the room could be overweight, could be shy, could be quiet. But do you know what? He might have stood up that day and told his best friend, I need help. So let's welcome Dan onto the podcast. It's Definitely Not Therapy. Hi, Dan.
Hello, how are you?
Not bad, how are you?
Yeah, not so bad, thanks, mate. To be fair, it feels a bit surreal. Because obviously, I watch all your content on Facebook, this, that, and the other, and it just feels a bit surreal that I'm talking to you.
You know, I appreciate the support and I appreciate you following, so thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
You won't want to follow me after. You'll be like, no, yeah, I've had enough of Dan now.
I'm sure I won't be. But it was something different. Reading, obviously, our email exchange, hi Dan. From
yeah,
it was something else. But
well, I'm really pleased, and I'm pleased that you not applied, but like showed your interest to want to be on the podcast, because a lot of the people I've had on, and it's not, I don't want to make it about age, but you're a younger guy. You're only, what are you, 22 were you?
Yeah, 22, yeah.
It's like, it's a lot of the people I've been speaking to are from an older generation. And I actually think that it's the younger generation that we need to really help to be able to buck the trend, to kind of spread awareness.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as you said, we'll get into it when obviously we start recording that. But I'll tell you all about my experience and obviously at what age it actually did start, because it wasn't 22.
It's definitely not therapy. Okay, look, Dan, as you know, we've spoken briefly, and the whole point of this podcast is that I speak to a different stranger on every single episode. I think it's important to speak to kind of real people that have been through real struggles. I think that, for me, is so much more relatable. As an example, you know, there's a lot of podcasts out there and a lot of videos that go viral are based on millionaires or billionaires or celebrities, and they're talking about their struggles. And I get that. Everyone's got struggles. It doesn't matter if you've got fame or money or what, everyone's got struggles. Personally, I find it harder to relate to someone who's got millions of pounds in the bank. I can relate more. And the thing that sort of helped me when I was struggling was actually talking to just people that have been in the exact same situation as me. So I'm hoping by talking to real people like yourself, Dan, that when you share your story, someone sitting there can perhaps think, do you know what, I'm in that situation, or I feel like he felt and he's come out the other side. I just think that's going to be more helpful, and it's going to help spread awareness for people that may need to just hear some of the things that we're going to talk about on the podcast. If you can tell me a little bit about yourself, Dan, just a bit of a kind of a bit of an icebreaker, so we get a bit of a sense of who you are, and then we'll maybe delve into the sort of more deeper stuff and a bit more about your story after, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine, yeah. So, I mean, I'm 22 years of age. I mean, currently for a day job, I do work for a train company. I'm not allowed to say which operator.
No, that's fine.
But I do work for a train company, just in general customer service, just helping people travel about our network day to day if anything goes wrong. I'm sort of the first point of contact. And as I say, it can be anything. It could be from a train cancellation to a train delay, or even something's not gone right and they want to complain about it. That's sort of what I do.
Okay. Do you like the side of it of helping people? Is that?
Yeah. So I've always been a person where if I can, I will go and help someone, and if I can't, then I will go out of my way and find a way to help them.
Okay. Because
in a job such as mine, I look at it as, well, what if I was in that position, or what if my other half was in that position, or what if my mum was in that position?
Yeah.
And that's really why I do the job that I do.
I mean, it's a good way to look at it. I think there definitely needs to be more people like you in that kind of industry, because there's been so many times. I mean, this isn't a rant. This isn't a podcast about rants, but there's been so many times where you just feel as a customer, you're just not cared about at all. And it's just like, you're just a number and just move on. So actually to have someone that does care and does want to go out of their way, that can make a real difference to someone's day.
It does. We have like this feedback thing that people can fill out after the call, or whatever channel it may be that they communicate to me on. But I genuinely find they communicate it to me directly and say, "Oh, look, you've been really helpful. There needs to be more people like you. Can I deal with you every single time?" And it pains me to say no.
And I'm sure, I mean, it's good that you're positive about that, and you should, if you work hard and you're passionate about your job, why not you should feel that, you should embrace that, you should enjoy that, you should celebrate that.
Yeah, absolutely. I do try and make a difference within my organisation. At the end of the day, I'm going to do what I can, and if I can't, then I will do it anyway.
Yeah.
Because that's the sort of person I am.
I think it's about having that sense of, you can go home and know that actually you've made a difference today. You've done something that's helped someone, or you've changed someone's opinion about customer services in general. I think it's just about that self-worth. I think sometimes we can get sort of bogged down with what other people think of us, and I'm definitely one for it. But back when I was an estate agent, and I loved my job, I loved the company I work for, but there was, it's a tough job, it's hard, but I made sure as often as I could, I'd be the person that, instead of putting that call off until tomorrow because it's home time, I'd stay and I'd make that call, and I'd be the one that would stay after, and I'd know I'd be able to go home knowing I put a fair shift in today. I've earned my money today. I've earned my worth today. And it's quite a feeling, really. It's definitely not therapy.
If you look at the problems too much, it has a negative impact, or it does on me. It has a negative impact, like, I've got to go to work today. This can go wrong.
Yeah. I guess it can do. I guess it's good that you don't seem to have that attitude.
Yeah.
You seem to have the attitude of you come out of it thinking I've helped someone, or I've been positive today, or I've made a difference, which can be hard because you could have an easy day and you might get one or two calls that are a bit tricky. You might have a day, I mean, I don't know obviously exact like the details, but you could have a day where you might get 20, 30, 40 calls and they're all stressful back to back, and that can have a real toll on your kind of mental health.
Absolutely. I mean, I was there for 3 months. I was 3 months into the position, and I took 62 calls, and out of those 62 calls, 25 were just not it.
Oh, really?
They were just not it. Yeah, and they got me down, and they made me feel like I shouldn't be in this job, that someone else should be doing it, and I didn't show my emotion during the phone call. I stayed professional, but then I hung that phone up, and that was the end of it, really, for me.
Wow.
I just had to let it out, because I've learned as my life has gone on, so to speak. I can't bottle things up.
Yeah.
I've got to either talk to someone, which I'm not very good at. I'm not very good at talking to people. I'm not very good at sitting down with someone and saying, "Oh, look, this has gone off today," be it work, relationship, whatever. I'm not good at that.
Yeah.
Or it's bottling it up.
But that's what we're here to change. That's what we're here to change, because you're not on your own with that. You're not on your own with that at all. And a lot of people, I would say, a lot of men especially, there is a stigma attached to speaking up. And one of the reasons I looked through your kind of application to come on the pod, and it was your age and what you'd been through in terms of you'd had mental health struggles from the age of 16. And I just thought, I need to speak to this guy, because I think we need to change. We need to buck the trend with the younger generation.
Yeah.
Being people like yourselves. And I think you guys have it hard, because you've probably not grown up and known anything different than what it is. But again, that's the same, for us older, I'm in my 40s now, I've just turned 41, but it's like we come from a generation of man up. We come from a generation of you don't talk about it, you just, pull your socks up and get on with it kind of thing. You just keep your emotions in. Whereas I think we need to change that trend, and we need to get people talking more. And that starts with the younger generation, really. So tell me then, Dan, a little bit about your story sort of leading up to 16. What was your sort of childhood like?
I mean, I didn't have that all of a good upbringing, to be honest. Just things were a mess. It was all over the place. See, I'm adopted, so I never knew my real parents.
Okay.
So my adoptive parents, they brought me up for the best part of 14 years, I'd say. And then after 14, things started sort of going downhill. And it wasn't until I turned 16, things just got like worse. At that point, I was in high school, and I'd been getting at high school and just out. I could walk out of my house, and because like everyone who I went to high school with, we all lived quite close together. We all knew each other.
Yeah.
I could walk out of my front door and I could be called every name under the sun. And that'd carry on the following day at school, to the point where they'd turn into physical altercations. I would retaliate for the sake of sticking up for myself, because I had the mentality of, I don't deserve that. No one deserves it. Unfortunately, it wasn't sort of poised that way. I was seen as the bad guy. I was the one seen starting everything. So that made me to start bottling things up and not telling anyone, not going home, not telling my parents, not telling the safeguarding team at school, because I'm the bad guy at the end of the day, or that's what it felt like. So why would I talk up?
So every time you did talk up, you were the one that was, you were punished for it. You were the one that they was like, well, you're the troublemaker.
Yeah. So every time I retaliated, and I did do whatever I did to him. yeah, I did, but this is the reason why.
Mm.
And I was always punished for it. I was said, oh, you shouldn't have retaliated back. You should have come and spoke to one of us. But it shouldn't have even got to that point anyway.
Yeah.
And if they were going to talk down to me when I am owning up, when I am trying to tell them that this is what happened and this is why, how are they going to react if I didn't do that? See, I always think that nobody cares about mental health until it's too late, be it in the sense of not being here no more, or be it in the sense of, get admitted to hospital. Again, this is my own outlook. Everyone will obviously have a different opinion, but it's only when those two situations occur, people actually think, oh yeah, do you know what? Maybe they did struggle.
Yeah.
Maybe we could have asked what was wrong. And no one did with me. You could see it on my face that, there's something up with him. He's not his normal bubbly self. But no one bothered asking, oh, how are you? Or what's bothering you? Come and talk to me.
Yeah.
They just all shot off. So I thought to myself, well, you know what? If no one's going to bother with me, why should I bother with them? Why should I bother going out of my way and telling people how I actually feel? So I did not bother.
But that's quite isolating, though, isn't it? So you must have felt like you just had no support network really around you, or your network. It was
that is how it felt. I couldn't go home. I couldn't tell my parents because I guess in one aspect as well, I was afraid of having that difficult conversation with my parents. Like, oh, I'm struggling with my mental health. I'm coming to you because I can't go to the safeguarding team at school because they're brushing it off. And I didn't want to make things worse. I guess I didn't want to make things worse for myself because I knew if I had that difficult conversation, then there'd be a phone call to the school. They'd drag me in. They'd try and get me to talk about it. And I wouldn't want to talk about it because every time I tried to, they brushed me off. So I started to blame myself for it, that this is all my fault. I should have done this. I should have done that. But I still didn't do anything. I still didn't act upon it.
But you, see, this is hard. It's hard to listen to because you were a 14-year-old kid. You're a child at that time, and yeah, do you know what? There might have been things that maybe you should have done differently. But how are you to know that if you haven't got an adult or a responsible adult to guide you?
Yeah, I get that. I mean, I can, now I am the age I am, looking back on my 14, 15, 16-year-old self, I can see that. I can see, yeah, do you know what? It's not entirely my fault because I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to ask for help.
Yeah.
I had parents, I had supposed to be a safeguarding team that did know what to do, and they chose not to. I can see that now, but back then I couldn't, and I was alone for ages. I kept things to myself, and it was only when I got with my first partner, I tried to talk things to her about everything, and I told her some aspects of my life that I never dreamed of even bringing up again. And it was kind of an opening, it was kind of an opening into the right, okay, this happened, so it could have caused this, but in essence, this should have happened. But I never sought professional help. I never sought counseling. I never did any of that because I didn't know how.
Yeah.
And at the time, I wasn't strong enough. I wasn't strong enough to put my hand up and say, actually, yeah, do you know what? I've got a mental health problem and I need help. I wasn't strong enough. And it was always told to me that asking for help, men especially, and I know obviously this is the reason for the podcast, to show people, to show men mostly that you're not alone. But I was told that I've got to have the mentality of suck it up and crack on with it.
Yeah.
And that's what I did for years and years and years, up until the point where I went through an even more difficult time. And I started doing other things,
Mm.
hurting myself. We'll just put it like that.
Well, just before we get onto that, so so what age were you when you spoke to your partner at the time?
So I had just turned 16.
Okay, so you say that. See, that's an early age to even think to yourself initially. Okay, I'm not gonna talk about this. I'm gonna lock this one in a box, and I'm not gonna talk about it. To then bring it up and open that box, and I'm certainly not an expert, but was that a kind of a not a cry for help necessarily, but that maybe that was you asking for help, was explaining what you've gone through. I mean, what made you at that point decide I'm going to tell this person these things that are hard to talk about?
It was seeing how my partner was like living. So to the point that she had a mum and she had a dad and she had a normal family, whatever a normal family is.
Hmm.
But the fact is, she had a support network. She had a mum, she had a dad, she had she had three brothers, but lived with two of them. So she wasn't alone. So she could go to any one of them and say, "Look, mum, dad, I've got a problem." And when I saw that happen for the first time, I thought, you know what? That's all. I just want someone who I can turn around to and say, I've got not necessarily a problem, but I'm struggling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just wanted to be able to talk. You wanted to be able to open up and just have at the very minimum, a conversation to kind of get it off your chest. A problem. What is it? A problem shared is a problem halved, or whatever the saying is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess, like you said, I guess you could say it was my cry for help. It wasn't a definite. It was just, okay, I'm giving a hint that something's wrong. Can someone pick up on it, please? Because I don't know how else to turn around and say the words, I need help. So instead, I kind of deflected it by bringing up all the other stuff that I never dreamed of doing, all the other stuff that I never dreamed of bringing up.
Yeah. I think everyone is going to have their own way of doing it. I mean, first of all, the fact that you were of that kind of age, 16, and you're still at the point of that's when you're going to start talking about it. That's quite a mature thing. You're obviously aware within yourself that actually, do you know what? Maybe I have got some struggles here. I think it is hard. There's probably so many things I did that were a cry for help, and a lot of them I just didn't realise. I remember one of them stands out to me. A lot had happened. I was on my honeymoon, which is obviously a sore subject, but I remember I'd had this song stuck in my head. It was a guy called Dax, and it was a video called "To Be a Man," and it was like this long medley. It was like a 15-minute song, and it's all about men's mental health. And I listened to it, and it just hit me. And I remember sort of showing my partner at the time. I was like, "Oh, look at this video," and I think that was my cry for help. Like, no, like this is like I'm relating to this song. Like, notice me, listen to me, and it didn't. It didn't. I think I felt like more of a burden by doing that. In the end, it didn't help. But again, that's part of the reason for this podcast and to kind of speak about these topics, which are raw. I'm sure they're raw for you to talk about. They're raw for me to talk about, certainly. But I think we need to talk about it. But yeah, sorry. So back to you anyway. Sorry, I've taken over there a bit.
No, it's fine. I think as important it is for me to explain my story, I think it's important for you as well, especially if it helps you, because you said that it helps us to talk to somebody, so you don't need to apologize at all. I appreciate it. But yeah, so we got to the point where that cry for help didn't work.
Mm.
My partner at the time just thought that I was just saying stuff that had gone on, didn't really affect me.
Okay.
But she felt as if I needed to make her aware for the sake of it, sort of thing. When that didn't work, as I was saying, I resorted to other means of cries for help.
Yeah. Is this still at the same age? It's the age of 16 with the same person?
Yeah, with the same person, same age. And I remember it as if it was yesterday. So I had hurt myself, and I went into school the next day. And I remember that I had I had sports that day, and I didn't want to do it for the sake of getting changed, and so
people finding out, people noticing and finding out, and then you've got to. Yeah. That's another thing you've got to explain or justify.
Yeah. So I made out like I didn't have my sports kit with me, and I turned around and I says, "Oh, I don't have the sports kit. I can't do it." And the teacher turned around to me and he said, "No, it's fine." He says, "We'll lend you some." And when he turned around to me and said that, my heart just sank.
Yeah.
And it was a summer's day, so t-shirt, shorts, that's all he needed.
Couldn't get away with a hoodie.
But I turned around to him and I said to him, "Look, sir, can I have a jacket? I'm feeling cold." I was roasting. But again, I didn't want anyone to find out, to justify it, to explain it, to unpack all that. I didn't want to unpack it. So he says, he looked at me and says, "Are you sure?" I says, "Yeah, I want a jacket." So I got changed, I put the jacket on, everything was fine. And then we went and we did sports, and I remember falling over, and the arm of the jacket had came up. It had ridden up my arm and made everything apparent. And someone looked over at me. They must have saw it, but they didn't come to check on me if I was okay. They didn't do anything. Instead, they went to the teacher, and they must have told them, because I went home that day. And my mum turned around to me and she said, "Let's have a look at your arm." And I said, "No, I don't want to." She says, "Why?" I said, I just don't want to. I've got schoolwork I need to be getting on with." I didn't, but I was deflecting.
Yeah.
And she was like, "So you're okay then?" Like, just like that, just after me giving her an excuse of "I've got schoolwork," also, "You're okay." And that hurt me, because she was pushing and pushing. And then I made up an excuse, and then it was almost as if she completely moved on.
Yeah.
So I just went to her and I said, "Yeah, I'm fine." And that was that for the rest of the night. And it wasn't until 2 weeks later she actually found out what I'd done. And she sat down with me. She spoke to me and she said, "You know what's made you feel like this?" But I couldn't talk. I wasn't strong enough to open up and say, "Look, all this goes on. I get bullied. If I get bullied in the street, it carries on to the next day at school." I wasn't strong enough to say any of that. So I just made up another excuse. And she let it go. She was like, "Oh, right, okay. Well, if she says, if you feel like that again, come and talk to me." If it was that easy,
yeah,
I would have done it the first time. And I feel like she didn't understand that. Which, of course, it's not her fault. Again, it's a different generation. She's been brought up to think one thing, and obviously I was being brought up with all these struggles, but also to be told, "Don't do anything with it."
Yeah.
Because it's embarrassing, and you're a man, and you should be strong, and you shouldn't show emotion, and you shouldn't do that. That's what I was brought up with.
It's also not being given the tools to do something with it. And I think that's where we fall short in the education. I think, one, the mental health system in this country is overstretched by miles anyway. You just need to watch any of the 999 TV shows with ambulance drivers, and they're like, mental health services, they've sent us again and we're not trained and we've got to help these people. People need help. But I think if we can start, I don't know. I don't have all the answers. I don't think anyone does. I think that's the problem. But I think we can start at the kind of root of the cause, and we can kind of educate people and give people the tools to deal with things like what you've been through. Then actually mental health is it's an illness. So it's not like you're just going to be like, oh, okay, I've spoken to someone and I'm over that now. But it might give you the tools and the things that people can use on a daily basis to make themselves be able to get up and like go after the day and attack the day and feel good about themselves and feel positive. I don't know.
No, absolutely. I get exactly what you mean. If we all had the tools, then it wouldn't get to the stages that it gets to.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, maybe it would. Like you said, everyone is different. But if we had, like, I don't know, like some core things that magically worked for everyone, it could then branch off into, again, what works for you, what doesn't.
Yeah. I think one thing that does work, I think sorry to interrupt you, Dan, I think one thing that does work that I'm seeing a lot more of from doing this podcast is talking. Talking does help. Talking is such a simple tool, but it does help. And some people want to talk publicly. Some people will be, you've obviously gone through it, but you're obviously at a point in your life where you're confident enough now, brave enough to come and do something like this, whereas a lot of people aren't. But there are a lot of clubs out there. There's Andy's Man Club, who is one of the biggest suicide prevention charities in the country. They do incredible work. And I've spoken to so many men, and the hardest thing to do is to walk through the door. But once you're through the door, it can change your life, because then you've got an immediate support network and you've got somewhere where you can just talk. And I think that's all a lot of people need. They just need to be able to talk and get it off their chest, and then that's enough for them to actually move on with their day. And I know one of the tools that Andy's Man Club uses, because I had someone that is a facilitator for them on a couple of days ago, and it was kind of like they remember something about everyone every week. So you feel like you come back and it's like, oh, how was this during the week? And it makes you feel, oh, someone cares enough to ask me. And it's such a little thing. It could be such a tiny little thing, but it's enough sometimes to make you think someone cares. Someone cares.
Yeah, absolutely. It's quite ironic, really, that you did pick up on Andy's Man Club, because the organisation that I work for, we actually do partnerships with them as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I remember we all, just as part of our core training, because as you can imagine with the railway, some calls are difficult. But as part of our core training, we did have a workshop with them. And I walked in and I sat down, and they started going on about mental health and suicide and self-harm. And, all the struggles that come with mental health, I guess. And I just walked out. I couldn't do it.
Really?
Because it was bringing up everything that I've been through. I know I needed to do it, but I couldn't.
You wasn't ready.
I wasn't ready to sit there and listen to everything that I had been through myself. So I remember I got up and I said, "Look, I'm so sorry, but I can't do this." And I walked out, and the manager came after me and he says, "Look, you okay?" He says, you don't look okay." And I says, "No, I'm not okay." I says, "But I can't talk about it." I says, I don't do talking to people that I don't know well enough.
Yeah.
I just can't do it. And he gave me our mental health. We have an employee program that we use for mental health. And he gave me the number and he says, "Ring that." He says, "Talk to them." And at that point, I felt like he's not listening to me. Because I turned around to him, and I know I'm going off on a tangent, but I'll get back to it shortly. I turned around to him and says, "I can't sit in a room and listen to all that. I can't turn around and talk to you because I'm not ready. And you turn around to me and tell me to talk to these strangers."
Yeah. Your whole thing was, I can't sit and talk about my problems in front of strangers. So here's a number, talk to another stranger. It's passing the buck, which is what. And look, I understand it. I'm not going to judge. I don't know that guy or what that guy's gone through. I think it's how to deal with that, what to say. Because actually, if someone is really struggling, the weight on, I guess, his shoulders at that moment you don't know. He might have been thinking, right, if I say the wrong thing and something happens to this lad, I can't live with myself. So, and I'm making that extreme. I'm making an extreme scenario there to kind of give him a bit of a get out of jail free, but that's where the education comes in. And I guess that's part of why Andy's Man Club were part of that, to help educate. But yeah, it's tough because you don't want to say the wrong thing. And I don't know if there is a right or a wrong thing in that moment. But certainly the wrong thing, I guess, would be listening to you saying, I don't want to talk to strangers. Oh, here's a number for another stranger. I'll go and talk to that. Like, that's obviously the worst thing to do in that situation, in my opinion. But
I felt like he had literally just not listened to a word I said.
Yeah.
At that point, I felt, what's the point? I had that what's the point feeling again.
Yeah.
That I had when I was 16, 14, 15, 16. And that came back, and I thought to myself, I'm not going to go back to where I was. I don't know how I'm not going to go back, but I'm not going to go back, if that makes sense. So I tried the talking thing.
Okay.
This time to my new. So by this point, me and my first partner had finished, done. That was tough as well. I'd been with them for 6 years, and it was just and then it was within 24 hours. It was like it was nothing. And I shut myself away for weeks on end. I didn't eat properly. I didn't do any housework. I didn't go to work. I got a doctor's note, and I signed myself off sick for 2 months.
Wow.
For a 6-year relationship, I signed myself off sick for 2 months, and even after those 2 months, I wasn't ready. But I had to force myself to be ready, because it comes that point of, right, my partner's not involved, so I've got to financially support myself. So I had to kind of force it, I guess, force myself to be okay, for the sake of going back to a previous job, and I guess, just half putting the effort in.
Yeah.
For the sake of earning an income, for the sake of, I guess, trying to make me feel better. Which it did work for a bit. And this time I turned around to my employer, again, different employer. I turned around to him and said, look, what mental health services do you offer? So at this point I was 17, 18.
Okay.
I said, what mental health services do you offer? And they says, what do you mean? I says, well, can I talk to anyone? Do you have any specialized people within the organization, or is it just research and hope for the best? And she says, oh, I don't quite know myself. So I reached out to my boss's boss, and I asked the same question. And I got shot in the foot for that. You should have gone to your team manager. You shouldn't have come to me. And I turned around and I says, well, I did go to my team manager, and they turned around to me and says, oh, they don't know what they offer. I said, so what else am I supposed to do? I said, because I've been in a situation like this a few years ago. I said, and it ended up with me hurting myself, and people still not caring, still brushing it off. So what else am I supposed to do? And at this point, I was in tears, because I had gone so many years, bottling it up. But I guess in a way, it had finally caught up to me. And it's like everything I bottled up from the ages of 14, 15, 16 is now coming to try and get me down when I'm in a stable job. And I didn't need that. So I took the initiative, and I tried talking once, as I say, and I got shut down. So I thought, again, what's the point? Why bother? So I didn't bother. So I had another couple of years worth of struggles on top of everything. And then I found my new partner, and she could tell that I wasn't right, in the sense that something was wrong. And it was this one particular day. So we'd been talking for a while, and I'd been bubbly, I'd been my normal self. How I was at the beginning of this podcast, basically. And she turned around to me and she says, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Pardon?" Because no one had asked me that before.
Okay.
And she says, "Are you okay?" I says, "Yeah." Again, deflecting.
Deflected and possibly a bit defensive as well.
Yeah. I didn't want to admit that I wasn't okay because
Mm.
I didn't know how she was going to react. If she was going to just brush it off or turn and say, "Oh, try talking to someone." So I says, "No, I'm not." I says, "Yes, I'm okay." And she's like, "You're not okay." I says, "Yes, I am. I'm okay. Just leave me alone." And she's like, "No, you're not okay. You never tell me to leave you alone. You always want to talk to me." She says, "No, you don't want to talk to me. So I can tell you now something is wrong with you." She says, "And I'm going to sit here in silence until you're ready to tell me what's wrong with you." And I says, "But I'm not going to tell you because I'm not going to talk to you." I says, I physically cannot talk about what is wrong with me." And she says, "Well, that's fine." She says, "What about texting?"
Wow.
And at that point, I thought to myself, "Do you know what? Someone's actually listened to me."
Mm. How long were you together when this happened, if you don't mind me asking?
2 months.
Wow. See, that's such a high level of support and awareness
Yeah.
in such a short period of time. Did
But I'm
you
smiling now, but that was my genuine reaction when she turned around and says, "Right, what about texting then?"
when you said that, and I know this is a deep story and it's a deep topic to talk about, but that made me smile because I thought, what, and I don't know this person, but just what a lovely, what a caring, what a kind, caring, thoughtful thing to do, and you probably needed that more than anything in the world at that moment.
Yeah. Because if she had turned around to me and said to me, "Talk to me again," it wouldn't have gone down well. But she
Yeah.
turned around to me and she said, "Well, what about texting?" And it put a different perspective on life. Like, maybe I should give opening up a go. Maybe, but maybe I should text about it because then I'm not feeling it. Because then I'm not feeling what I'm saying.
Mm.
They're just words on a screen that in 3 weeks' time we will have texted that much. I won't remember it.
Yeah.
So I did exactly that. I texted, and I must have been texting her for 3 hours straight, explaining from when I was 14 right up until the point when my employer says, "Oh, you shouldn't have come to me. You should have gone to your team manager about it." Because there was, there's. I've just touched on the surface what I've been through, because I'm obviously aware that podcasts are time constricted. But I just touched on the surface. But I went into deep
Really.
context. And I went into a deep level as to what actually happened to me, why I am the way I am. And she turned around to me with a one-liner, and it said, "It's okay. I'm here for you."
Wow.
And that, although it wasn't a gigantic paragraph to say, "I understand how you feel." In fact, I think if it was a giant paragraph saying, "I understand how you feel,"
Yeah.
it would have made things worse.
That would
Because,
have undone everything you just said. That would have undone it because you can't. No one can say that. They might think that they're going to say that because that's the right thing to say.
yeah,
But what she's done here is she's actually listened. She's listened to you. You've said, "I'm not going to talk about it." She said, "Okay, well, but she's found a solution." Listen to you, found a solution. And then she has listened. And then she's said, "I'm here for you." Like, that's just incredible.
I said to her, "Do you know that's the first time that someone's turned around to me and said that?" She says, "No, it's not. You're lying to me." I says, "No, I'm being serious." She says, "What, you've gone all those years with no support, with bottling it up?" I says, "Yes, I did." I says, and during that time, I says, I guess to kind of cope with it, I says I resorted to hurting myself because of it. And she turned around to me and she says, "I've got one regret." And at this point, all that was going through my head was, "Yeah, you're now regretting listening to me. You're now regretting me telling you everything I've been through because I've just told you that." I says, "What's your regret?" And she says to me, I regret not knowing you sooner to try and help you sooner.
That's heartbreaking.
She says, I'm not going to be able to help you because I can't understand you. She says, but what I can do is I can try and understand what makes you feel how you feel, and I can try and understand it for myself so I don't do those things to make you in a worse place. And at that point, I hung up on the phone to her, and I just bursted out crying. And she texted me. She says, "Are you okay? What's wrong with you?" And she rang me back.
Mm. She obviously really cared. She sounds like she really, really cares.
Yeah, which hurts a little bit because I mean we're well into. I mean we're not well into the relationship. We've been together a year and 6 months, but it hurts because there have been times where she's told me when we first got together, "Oh, I'll listen to you so I know what not to do." And she's gone and done exactly those things. And it's kind of like, well, do you care about me or not? But I don't think that too much because if she didn't care about me, then I wouldn't be a year and a half into the relationship. And I know 22 is still a young age, and there's obviously still, I mean, there's anyone that's and I know obviously you're to tell me if it's a touchy subject. I know that there can be any amount of time when a relationship can go wrong. And again, I don't mean that in a way that, do you know what I mean?
No, I get it 100%. And I mean, you're right. You can't. I think relationships take work, and it is give and take, and it's I think and this isn't me giving advice because I'm not a specialist in, certainly not in relationships. Look at me. But if I can sort of say one thing, and that's okay, yeah, you've struggled with your mental health and you've opened up, but it is about being understanding to the other side as well, and the fact that she was understanding when you needed her to be, and that people are people. People aren't ever going to be perfect, and there might be times where things slip or people forget because it's human nature. And it's, I think, about allowing that kind of that give and take. It's about allowing, okay, rather than thinking, well, does she know me at all? Does she care about me? She obviously does, and I think you know that she does because you've just said that. But it's give and take. Relationships take work, but it's also about appreciating them, even in the moments where you think this is hard, or this is a tough thing to deal with, or this is a tough topic to talk about, whatever. Because without being too dramatic, you could think, listen, I sat there and I was probably not in a bad way, but I was probably felt like the most arrogant man in the world because I had everything I dreamed of. I had it. It was there.
Yeah.
A beautiful wife, beautiful little girl, a stable home, an interesting job that gave me all this free time for my family. And just like that, it's gone without you knowing it's going to happen. So I think it's about appreciating the moments. And you're certainly much more aware of your mental health than I was, even at the age of however old I was, 38, 39, 40, just turned 40, I think, actually. So, yeah, I was 40 years old and I still wasn't really aware of mental health and what struggles I had myself. So,
when I say I've followed you for quite a while, even back to those days, and then I started seeing your more recent content about mental health. And there were times I know I reached out when I did, but I wanted to reach out to you before and drop you a message, but I didn't know how, because we don't know each other. We don't know what works for each other. And I didn't want to say something that would bring it all back. But then I saw that post, that recent post that I messaged you about, and I thought, you know what? This could be an icebreaker, so to speak, of talking to you and I say getting to know you, but sort of saying my piece. And obviously, as I said to you, I'm proud of obviously how far you've come, because it's all well and good to sit here and say, and I think you're valid, but it's good to sit here and say, we need to make the younger generation aware of mental health and the tools to use. And again, I think it's valid, but I think it's just as equal, if not more important, that we make the older generation aware again of the tools that is available and the things that are out there. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's important for everyone to know.
I think it's the older generation, even like 30s, 40s and above, that probably need the help more, because we're brought up differently. We're brought up to kind of not show any emotion. And I'm not saying that that's different, because that was the same for you, because you were then brought up by people that, were brought up like that too. But I think it's the younger generation that can buck the trend. I don't know how, but I think by talking, a lot of younger people now, everyone's on social media. Social media is such a big thing in everyone's life. And yeah, I think that's the way to, or it's a way to spread awareness and to get people talking more, and to not feel ashamed about asking for help, and not feel embarrassed about asking for help, really. It's definitely not therapy.
So yesterday, I actually had a struggle with my current partner, and it was difficult for me to handle. So instead of bottling it up, I actually phoned my dad, and I turned around to her and I said, look, I'm struggling. Rumours had been made up. Whether they were rumours or not, no one's ever going to know. And it was, there's a two sides to every story. So I was told one thing, she was telling me another. I phoned my dad and I said, look, I need your help, and I need you to try and help me, because I don't know what to do. And he says, well, what's gone wrong? Because you don't sound yourself. You don't sound your normal self, and this sounds more serious than any other sort of niggly fallout that we have. And I says, well, yes, it is. I says, this is why. I says, people have been going around saying things. It's sending my head into a spiral of, am I now going to be alone for the rest of my life? And am I now going to have that worry of, who do I talk to? How do I get past it? And he turned around to me and he says, look, he says, I know you don't like talking. He says, you never have done. He says, but if there's one thing that I've learned from you, from your past relationship, it's to talk it out with the other person. Because if you don't talk it out with the other person, you're going to end up worse off.
Yeah.
And he is right, because that is exactly what happened with the other person. I didn't talk things out, and after 6 years, it was time to call it quits. So I turned around to my current partner last night, and I says to her, well, look, you need to help me understand, because right now I have got so many things going off in my head. Like, I'm not good enough for you. You deserve better. I deserve better. I says, you need to help me figure out what I'm going to do. And she turned around to me and she says, right. She says, I'm going to hang up on you. And she says, and we're going to text about it. She says, because talking doesn't work for you. She says, it works for me. She said, but it doesn't work for you. And at the end of the day, she says, you come first. She says, so I'm going to hang up on you. She says, and we're going to text about it. And she says, and you can call me whenever you feel ready. And that's what we did. And we spent hours upon hours texting about the situation. And we must have spent 3, maybe 4 hours.
Yeah.
I know this. I know I got about 2 or 3 hours of sleep. I had to be up at 5 o'clock this morning to start at 6 o'clock.
Wow.
So I know I didn't get much sleep.
Did it resolve things though?
Yes, it did. And that was the only takeaway that I took from it. Sleep is replaceable, I guess. A relationship that because I value the relationship,
Yeah.
a relationship that I value so much. I might find one out there, but then I'm just taking the coward's way out and not talking about it, not trying to resolve it.
Yeah, I think it's important. I think you've clearly learned from past experiences that it's better to talk. I wouldn't ever want anyone to feel like you'd be alone if this relationship ended, because especially at such a young age, and I hope that you go off and you live a happy life together, and you have everything that you both want, but you don't want to just sit there and think this is it for me if this goes wrong, because that's so much pressure on you, that's so much pressure on her. Like, you're still a young guy, and without being too negative, obviously I've said what I've said, and like I say, I hope that you both go on and you're happy forever and you have happily ever after. That's incredible. But you are only 22, and I didn't meet who I thought was the love of my life until I was 36. And that's when I had a baby, and that's when I then bought a house, and that's when I started a business. All those things didn't come for me until much later in life. So just try and enjoy every moment. I don't want this to turn into a kind of, because I'm certainly not an expert in any realm of relationships, like, clearly. But so I don't want to kind of overstep the mark with it, and I want to be respectful to you and your partner, and I do appreciate you opening up. It's definitely not therapy. What I was going to ask, and you may have touched on it already, what was your lowest moment?
Yeah, I briefly touched. I didn't touch on the moment, but I briefly touched on the reason. So obviously, as I said at the beginning, obviously I'm adopted, so I was brought up by two parents. And I didn't have a father figure, so I had two mums.
Okay.
And I remember this was yesterday. I came home from, I say a hard day's work at school. I didn't do any. But I came home from school and I went to the park. I said to my mum, look, Mum, I'm going out to the park. I'll be back around 8 o'clock. So yeah, that's fine. And then I get a phone call whilst I was at the park. And the only time my mum ever phoned me is if she needed me.
Okay.
So I got worried. I said, Mum, are you okay? And she was like, no. She said, don't come home. At that point, I was on my bike, already pedaling home. I says, well, tough, I'm coming home. She's like, no, don't. She's like, Charlie's turned up, which is the other person. And I'm like, right, okay, why? And she said, well, she's trying to take the family dog. Now, the dog was a found. I didn't have much involvement with it, but it meant so much to my mum that it meant so much to me.
Yeah.
So I says, well, look, I says, I'll go around the next door neighbours. I'll come home that way. So no one can see me. And then I remember walking out the front, and my other mum, Charlie, she was stood out the front, and I says, well, what are you doing? She said, I'm taking the dog. I'm like, no, you're not taking the dog. It lives here. It always does. It always has, and it always will. And she's like, no, I'm taking the dog. I says, no, you can get back in your car and you can leave. But I used much more colourful choice words. And she turned around to me and she says, I don't know what you're telling me what to do for. You're not even my son. I was that mad and that upset that I ran down my path. She was one side of the car door and I was other. And I pushed with all the strength that I had in me on that car door. And I pushed her in her car and I trapped her finger in the car door. Now, at the time, I felt bad because that's the person I am. If I hurt anyone, then I feel bad. And then I went to the front of the car and I damaged it. Didn't bother me. And then I went to the back and she had her handbrake on and her foot brake on the car at this point. So it was stationary. No one was going to push that. But I did. I was that angry. What she had turned around to me and what she said to me. That I had this strength had come from out of nowhere. and I was pushing her car halfway down the road with her foot brake on it and her handbrake. And then after that, she decided to drive off. And I ran back inside. I ran up to my room and I just burst out crying. And I started hurting myself again. I started having the mentality, maybe I don't deserve to be here.
Well, it's a hard thing to hear, isn't it? You know, for someone to say that out of, you know, and as much as we can appreciate, well, people say things when they're angry. In the heat of the moment, it's not easy to process that, especially when you've been through what you've been through.
So I was filled with maybe I was put for adoption because my real parents didn't love me. Maybe they tried to give me a go as a young kid, as a young baby, but I was too much to handle, so they got rid of me. Maybe I don't deserve to be here at all. So I started hurting myself, and then later that night, I went on social media, which probably wasn't the best of ideas. Now I found if I'm going through a tough time to take myself out of the social media situation.
Yeah.
But I went on social media. There was a photo of the damage that I did to her car with the caption, "Shame it wasn't him." I went into school that next day and that was it. That day I picked a fight with anyone I could.
You're just angry.
I was angry. I was frustrated. I just picked a fight with anyone I could, just so I could get all that rage out of me, because I was never going to see her again. And quite frankly, I didn't want to. But people at school, I was always going to run into.
Yeah.
And I guess that was my lowest point. I picked a fight with, I picked a fight with many people that day. Actually, I think I got excluded for like a week. But I just turned around and said, I don't care.
Well, you're in that mindset. You was in self-destruct mode and were just destruct mode. You just wanted to be destructive and cause chaos and lash out and show your anger, and you wanted to be noticed because you'd had someone say that terrible thing to you. So, you know, it's you know, I can't. I'm not in that situation. I've not been in that situation. Obviously, I can't condone violence towards anyone, you know, obviously lashing out at school and whatnot, but we've all been there. We've all had those moments. But moving forward, how do you cope? Because I'm presuming that was when you were 16, 17, 14, 15, something like that?
Yeah, I think it was between the ages of 14 and 17.
Okay. So how do you sort of cope now then in a more positive manner? Obviously, I appreciate you had the kind of the issues recently with your partner, but that it still seems like that's a mature way to have handled that. You phoned your dad, you've asked for advice, you've talked to your partner, you've done it in a manner that suits you both, and you've resolved it. So is that how you generally resolve conflict in your life now?
Generally, I try not to get my dad involved. Obviously now my biological parents. That was probably one of the highest points in my life. I emailed the council where I was adopted through. And I was like, I want to get in touch with my biological parents. Didn't hear back for a week. So I thought, right, okay, they don't want anything to do. I mean, maybe they're not even here. Maybe some drastic life event happened and they're not here no more. I don't know. And then I heard back. And it was an email with my mum's phone number and my dad's phone number.
Okay.
And I keep in touch with them as much as I can. But as I said, generally, I don't get my parents involved with any conflict that happens with my partner, because the way I see it is I'm with my partner. The relationship is just me and my partner. It's not me and my partner, and on the side, my mum and dad, her mum and dad, when it feels like it.
And you don't want to go, and this is, I think, a trait that a lot of people will do is, and I'm not necessarily suggesting this is a bad thing, but a partner will have an issue and the first people they run to are their parents. So then they're always just constantly being fed bad things. You know, it's like, oh, you know, Dan's done this again. I'm referring to like myself in this, by the way. So like, Dan's done this, Dan's done that. So all they're hearing is bad stuff. They're not hearing, oh, Dan done this amazing thing for me, or Dan took me to this amazing, like, they run to parents, and you go to parents when it's a negative rather than a positive, and then that's the opinion that people build of you.
Yeah.
So you're right. You're
That's
right to not get, your parents involved in, every little thing.
But that's where me and her differ. She will get her parents involved, and that annoys me because, as I said, the relationship isn't me and her and both of our parents. It's me and her. Like, if we ever choose to go down the path of tying the knot, so to speak, it's not going to be me and my partner, and then my parents and her parents are going to get married. It's going to be just me and her.
Yeah, you're building your own family and your own support network. But that's not what she's doing, though. It isn't out of the ordinary. It is a lot of people. Although I've got an opinion on it, that's what a lot of people do, because that's her support network and that's who she goes to when maybe she's frustrated. But that's, again, part of, I guess, being understanding to it. There's going to be things that you may think that frustrates me, but there'll be things the other way around that frustrate her, and she'll be sympathetic to them. So it's just, but again, I'm not here to, I don't want to kind of delve into your relationship and what goes on. It's more about the mental health aspect of it and what you've been through.
No, absolutely. I think if I could look back on my 14, 15, 16, 17, or whatever, if I could look back on my younger self, I would know what to do. I would know to tell myself, do you know what, Dan, don't do this. It doesn't work. Try this. I mean, they say hindsight's a wonderful thing, and it really is. I know I'm not 14 now, but I didn't have available to me then what I do now. And just knowing what I have available to me now, I would have been able to deal with it much, much better.
But the positive is, if you don't mind me saying, you've now got those tools available and you're only 22.
Yeah, absolutely. Which
is still incredible. And I think the fact that you've gone on and you do a job that's rewarding and you help people, I think that is incredible. So, hats off to you.
I sit and do my job, and I still struggle. Because, as I said, in the railway, anything can happen. It can be someone wants to jump on the line or anything. And I sit there and I think to myself, that could have been me, but it's not. And I wish I could help them, but I can't. They're not going to... They do phone me because they're scared, because they're frightened. But just like I didn't want to hear it, they don't want to hear me talk at them and say, it's going to be okay, and I understand you. Because I didn't appreciate that when it was happening to me. Maybe I apply a little bit, maybe I've applied a little bit too much of personalized experiences to it, but that's the only way that I can sit through those difficult phone calls and I guess be okay.
Yeah.
I've got a great support network now. I've got my partner. I've got my dad. I've got my mum. But inside of work, it's great too. So that same manager that turned around to me and told me just talk to this number. He now understands that talking doesn't work for me, and I will say good morning to him, and then the rest of our conversations will be over our corporate chat.
Okay.
And that's how it'll be. That's how it's always been. And I feel like he appreciates me a lot more now.
Well, that's good though. That's good that he's obviously, you've learned to kind of communicate with him in that way. You've obviously done the same with your partner, and there seems to be a pattern there. So I'm really pleased that, things are definitely much better for you now than when you were, 14, 15. I appreciate you opening up and being so sort of open and vulnerable as well on the pod. So thank you for that, Dan. before we sort of wrap up, just because obviously I'm aware of the time, and you'll probably want to get some sleep since you've only had 2 hours sleep, but I always like to finish on something a little bit lighter. So I always want to kind of ask, look, what would be, have you got something that's happened in the last week that's really made you laugh, or have you got like a go-to joke that you like to tell?
It's not so much of a, I mean, I'm awful with jokes.
Most people are. I hate it when someone says to me, tell me a joke. I scrowl. I just don't. It's always inappropriate. So, but I thought I'm going to put people on the spot and just see what joke you've got, or it might be something that you might have seen something and thought, oh, it's made me chuckle today. It's just, I just like to end on a lighter note, really.
The thing that I guess I find comfort in, and everyone calls me mad for it, is going out on catching a train and just going anywhere. I'll use the train company I work for because of the benefits we get. And it was Friday. My manager turned around to me. He says, "I can't believe you're going all that way just for a dessert." And it was 10 minutes on a train. And he says, "I can't believe you're going all the way just for a dessert." He says, "You can have a look around." I said, "No." I'm just going to go get my dessert, and then I'm going home.
So 10 minutes on a train, get your dessert, and come all the way back.
Yeah, but for me, when I was on that train journey, it was a sense of relief. Like, do you know, I never would have thought 22-year-old me, knowing how 14-year-old me was, I never would have thought I would have got on a train, even 10 minutes, to somewhere I've never been before for a dessert, and then go back. And for me, that was really, I say everyone could be mad for it. I went into work yesterday, and I said, "Oh, do you know what, guys? We've really got to go to this dessert place."
I need to know what this dessert place is now, and I need to know exactly what you had, because it will bug me. I will not sleep unless I know the full information now.
So it's a dessert shop up in Barnsley. So I live in Sheffield, so that's sort of that South Yorkshire region, and it's called Dolly's Desserts.
Okay.
And I had a Kinder Bueno bubble waffle, and it is absolutely mega.
Okay, well, I'm Googling it, obviously. If you've stitched me up and this is something inappropriate, then I will not be happy, Dan.
Oh, man, no, honestly, it's not. I took a photo and I sent it to my work. I sent it to my work colleagues. And I was like, you know what? I know it's 10 minutes away, but you've got to go.
It's definitely not therapy. Nice one. Well, look, Dan, thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for being, like I say, thanks for being so open and vulnerable and honest, and for telling your story. I genuinely believe, like, it's stories like yours that people can relate to.
Appreciate you having me. So when I first saw it, I was nervous, and I think everyone that you've had on prior and everyone that will be on, I think that they'll all be nervous, and I can imagine yourself. You were nervous announcing it.
Massively. And I'm still nervous before every single episode. I'm nervous. I'm like sitting here sweating because it's important. Like, I just believe in this so much.
Yeah.
But I don't want to ruin it. I don't want to I don't want to come across like I'm trying to tell people how to kind of cope with stuff. I just want to be able to sit and give people a voice that perhaps feel like they don't have a voice. I want to give people a space that can tell a story that they might think, well, I haven't really got anything interesting, but do you know what? I think every single person has got an interesting story in them.
I was really nervous. And then obviously came the email, "Oh, can you send me some time?" I was like, this is actually happening.
It's real now.
And it took me, like, I wanted to do it, of course, but it took me that courage to send that email. Like, I had the email, I must have had that email out for 3 hours. And it took me a lot of courage to hit that send button, because I knew once I hit send, I'm going to be sat on here one day or another explaining to you and to everyone what it is, my story is, and how I cope with it. And as I say, I've never spoke in this manner. I've never spoke on a podcast.
Well, the fact that you've said it 3 or 4 times, you know, you're a texter, you can sit there and you can put you can put your emotions on paper, but this is quite clearly out of your comfort zone. But you've done really, really well, Dan. You've been nothing but honest and open with me. You've told me your story, which I massively, massively respect. And yeah, I just want to say thank you, mate. Thanks for putting yourself out there. And you should be really proud of yourself. And I don't mean that to sound condescending, but the fact that you were nervous, and it's so easy. And trust me, I've had people that have booked and they've messaged and said, Dan, I've lost my bottle, I can't do it. And that is fine, because I don't want anyone on that is going to make them stressed or anxious. But I can promise you, and hopefully you'd agree with this, you were nervous, but you've done it, and hopefully you can feel a sense of, okay, it wasn't that hard. I've spoken about my life, and actually nothing bad has happened.
I feel that now more than anything. And I am proud of myself, and I never say that. I never turn around to myself after a day of work or doing something else that I'm just proud of. I never turn around and say to myself, actually what? I'm proud of myself. So for me to say that back, that's an achievement for me, as small as it sounds, but it's those small achievements that are gonna get me through life, I guess.
100%. And I think you should have, and I don't know if this may help you, it may not. It's something a good friend of mine recently sort of told me, and it's quite, I don't know what the word is, philosophical maybe. That's probably the wrong word. A good friend of mine, he's a magician. He basically said, look, you need to have, everyone in life really needs to have a magician's mentality. Let me give you an example. And I come to you and I say, right, Dan, here's an apple, make that float. And sat next to you is my friend the magician. I say to him, right, same to you, here's an apple, make that float. Would you know what? Both of you are going to have completely different mindsets on how that happens. You are going to be the same as me, and you're going to say, well, that's an apple can't float. Because of course an apple can't float. The magician is going to say, okay, what does that look like? And he's already thinking, he's not thinking at all, that can't be done. He's thinking, how can I do that? What does that look like? And it's a different mentality. It's a whole deeper thing than just what I've told you there, but that's the basis of it. And it's about changing your mindset to not immediately thinking, oh, I can't do that. I can't talk. I can't open up. It's thinking, okay, what does it look like if I do? And this is an example of it. This is what it looks like if you do. It looks like you've made another friend. Do you know what I mean? You've got someone else you can talk to now. My DMs are always open. Dan, listen, I'm going to let you go, but thank you so much. And yeah, I'll catch up with you soon, yeah?
All right, thanks, Dan.
And that was Dan. Dan was bullied at school from the age of 14. Dan was adopted. He struggled with his emotions. He didn't have a support network. The support network he thought he had were not there for him. When he was trying to speak up, he was kicked and he was put down and he was told, you're the problem. You can understand why he lashed out. We obviously don't condone violence of any sort, but I can certainly relate to how he must have felt. And I think when you must have felt that alone and that judged and that picked on, it's not right, but you can understand why he might have been frustrated and why he might have lashed out. Obviously, Dan's matured now and he's found a way to communicate. He's got a partner that clearly cares about him. He's gone on and he's found his birth parents, which is just an amazing thing. I wish Dan the best of luck. That's it for this episode of Definitely Not Therapy. And if you cried, laughed, smiled, or just felt slightly uncomfortable, then we've done our job. Make sure to follow, subscribe, leave a review if you can, and perhaps share this with someone who feels alone right now, because that might make them just feel less alone. There's someone else going through the same thing as them. Whatever your story might be, whether it's co-parenting issues, divorce, breakups, heartbreak, anything that goes unspoken, things that you feel like you can't talk about, come and talk to me about them. Let's help to spread some awareness. All you need to do is email me at onlydanlawrence@gmail.com or DM me on any of my social media platforms. Dan Lawrence on Facebook, Dan Lawrence Comedy on Instagram, or Definitely Not Therapy Pod on Instagram. I'm Dan Lawrence, and I'll see you next time.